Deep in Yellowstone's wilderness, strange figures have appeared on camera, shapes too large, too fast, and too human-like to explain. The recordings are shaky and frantic, filled with fleeting silhouettes that leave only one question. Did witnesses capture something impossible? And did they stumble onto evidence of a living legend? In 2014, Mary Greeley was doing her usual thing, filming around Yellowstone for her YouTube channel. She focused on seismic stuff and weird happenings near the park. One March morning, snow was everywhere in the upper geyser basin, and she had her camera rolling to document the changing conditions. Then something incredible happened. About half a mile away across a ridge, two figures showed up. At first glance, you might think of wildlife, but the way they walked upright immediately ruled that out. The footage captures these bipedal beings taking massive steps, each one covering nearly 6 feet. How does that compare to a human stride of about 2.5 feet? And doesn't that suggest something isn't right here? Park rangers had measured the snow depth at over 3 feet, yet these figures moved like it was nothing. Their movement was smooth and powerful, effortless even. Analysis put their height somewhere between 8 and 9 feet tall, with broad shoulders and arms that seemed unusually long. When you go frame by frame, the footage shows a heel-to-toe stride that's consistent with primates, definitely not humans trudging through snow in winter gear. Biologist Dr. Sarah Mitchell pointed out that bears simply cannot walk on 2 legs for that kind of distance, and elk or bison silhouettes would look completely different. Human visitors would also avoid that kind of deep, unmarked terrain entirely. Thermal analysis suggested both figures were giving off substantial heat, exactly what you'd expect from large, warm-blooded creatures. Halfway through the video, the beings stopped and turned toward the camera, almost like they knew they were being watched. After several seconds, they retreated into the tree line with startling speed and vanished from view. The whole encounter lasted just under 4 minutes. The clarity, stable camera work, and environmental context have made this one of the most analyzed cryptid recordings ever captured. Park officials stay neutral on the matter, though some rangers privately admit they've heard similar reports. Greeley herself maintains her reaction was completely genuine. She was capturing a mystery she never intended to find. But if Yellowstone showed us these towering figures moving through snow at a distance, the Washington pictures brought that same presence right up close. What once seemed like shadows on a ridge was now staring directly through a cabin window. A cabin sits in the forests of Washington state, about 45 miles southeast of Olympic National Park. And for weeks leading up to this encounter, the place had been plagued by weird disturbances. Motion lights going off for no reason, heavy knocks echoing through the night, even electrical issues that made no sense. The owner started to suspect something was circling his property after dark, watching, waiting. So on October 14, 2012, he set up a night vision camera aimed right at the window. The photograph it captured has been picked apart by enthusiasts and experts ever since. It shows this towering figure, roughly 8 feet tall, pressed right up against the glass. Thick, dark hair covers this muscular frame, with shoulders that span nearly 4 feet across. Beneath all that hair, you can see the chest and torso revealing this human-like musculature that's both fascinating and terrifying. But it's the face that makes this encounter so absolutely striking. You're looking at this combination of human and ape-like features framed by long hair with these deep-set eyes reflecting the camera's infrared glow. The eyes aren't just wandering around aimlessly either. They're focused, scanning with this awareness that sends chills down your spine. The figure tilts its head slightly, observing the interior with this unnerving intent. Analysts have noted the natural musculature and hair patterns, details that would be nearly impossible to fake convincingly. Those long arms extending beyond human proportions align perfectly with Bigfoot descriptions from the Pacific Northwest. Doesn't the image appear anatomically consistent with the creature's posture and body proportions matching those of a primate evolved for forest life? This cabin image revealed a creature willing to step right out of the shadows and confront human spaces directly. But in Georgetown, the next encounter suggested something different. A tall creature observed from a distance, staying hidden in the tree line, watching but keeping its distance. The Georgetown Loop is this heritage narrow-gauge railway that's been running between Georgetown and Silver Plume since the 1880s. It carries riders through some seriously rugged terrain at elevations over 8,400 feet. On that September afternoon in 2025, Brian's snapping photos of golden aspens, dark pines, rocky outcrops, the usual mountain stuff. Later, when he's going through his shots, a friend notices something weird. There's this towering figure, partially hidden behind a pine tree, and it looks like it's watching the train. The image starts spreading online and draws interest from cryptid researchers pretty quickly. Analysts are noting the subject's apparent height of 8 to 9 feet, with this domed head that resembles what they call a sagittal crest. The body proportions don't match humans at all. We're talking broad shoulders, barrel chest, and these unusually long arms. Experts confirmed there are no statues or displays along that stretch of track, which cuts through remote sections of the Arapahoe National Forest. That's a million-acre wilderness home to bears, elk, and moose. But officials note that none of those animals match the silhouette in this photograph. Digital imaging specialists went over this thing and found no signs of alteration. The lighting, grain, and shadows were all consistent across the photo. Scale analysis using nearby trees estimated a height between 8.5 and 9.5 feet. The figure's position, hidden yet observing, suggested intent rather than just random chance. Was this the deliberate presence of something watching from cover? Brian, by all accounts, reacted with genuine surprise, not like someone trying to promote themselves. He actually sought verification, contacted the railroad, and allowed experts to review the image. The accidental nature of the capture, combined with daylight clarity and ideal habitat, has led some people to call this one of the most compelling Bigfoot photographs yet, though skeptics remain unconvinced, of course. The Georgetown photo revealed this towering figure observing from concealment, staying hidden, but watching. But the next case showed something far more striking. A massive creature moving deliberately through human territory, its size and behavior captured in real time. Paul Freeman was a seasoned outdoorsman with serious experience in tracking and wildlife observation. He'd been intrigued by the elusive Sasquatch for years. On August 20th, 1992, while following a series of massive tracks near Deduct Spring, Freeman spotted this large, bipedal figure moving through the underbrush. With his camera ready, he documented the creature's movements, capturing footage that would become a cornerstone of cryptozoological study. The footage reveals a creature approximately 7 feet tall, covered in dark, shaggy hair, moving with this fluid, rolling gait that suggests a completely non-human anatomy. Its proportions, particularly the length of its arms and the width of its shoulders, differ significantly from those of a human. Could those physical traits really belong to a person in disguise, or do they point to something far beyond human fabrication? This led researchers to conclude that the creature isn't just a human in a costume, but a distinct species entirely. Nearby, Freeman documented footprints measuring 17 inches in length, with distinct toe spread and depth indicating a creature of significant size and weight. These prints, along with the video evidence, have been analyzed by experts who argue that the anatomical details visible in the footage support its authenticity. The Freeman footage has had a massive impact on Bigfoot research, inspiring numerous expeditions, documentaries, and scientific analyses. Its clarity and the detailed account provided by Freeman have made it a focal point in Bigfoot studies, fueling debates and discussions about the existence of Sasquatch. For Freeman, this encounter was way more than just a chance sighting. It was a profound moment that combined physical evidence with unexplained phenomena. The creature's behavior and presence suggested intelligence and awareness, challenging assumptions about Sasquatch behavior and its place in the natural world. Freeman's encounter suggested a creature that was completely aware of its surroundings, moving with purpose and intelligence. But decades earlier, another massive bipedal figure navigated the forest with deliberate motion, leaving footprints and evidence that would ignite a widespread debate that continues to this day. Patterson and Gimlin were both experienced outdoorsmen, riding horseback along the east bank of Bluff Creek on October 20th, 1967, when they spotted this large bipedal figure moving through the underbrush. With his camera ready, Patterson documented the creature's movements, capturing footage that would become the cornerstone of cryptozoological study. The film that followed became legendary. The subject, broad, heavy-set, and moving at a pace that dwarfed human stride, turned its head once toward the camera before continuing into the tree line. The proportions alone drew attention, long arms swinging freely, musculature shifting beneath the hair, and a gait smoother than expected under rough footing. In the sandbar mud, Patterson and Gimlin later measured prints about 16 inches long, the toes clearly defined, and the depth of the impressions suggesting an immense weight. These tracks, paired with the footage, would fuel decades of debate. The Patterson-Gimlin film is still considered the most influential piece of evidence in Sasquatch study. Its daylight clarity, the distance of the subject, and the sheer immediacy of the encounter separate it from countless other claims. This film revealed a Sasquatch moving with intent, its behavior suggestive of awareness and intelligence. An even more shocking encounter in Oregon would capture that same intelligence on camera, proving the phenomenon wasn't confined to a single place or moment in time. The video starts in September of 2015, with the family talking casually as they walk along a narrow trail. Then suddenly, the camera swings toward a figure moving fast through the brush. This thing walks on two legs, covered in dark hair. It could be simply another primate or a man in a ghillie suit, but researchers who've studied this footage say we're looking at something completely different. The family found footprints nearby, and the toe spread, the depth. Everything pointed to a creature with serious size and weight behind it. Experts who've analyzed these prints alongside the video footage argue that the anatomical details you can see support this being the real deal. Online, the footage has split people down the middle. Believers say the shaky off-center framing proves it's authentic, too raw and clumsy to be staged. Skeptics fire back that the timing is too neat, that someone in a suit could have been planted just off the trail, waiting for the camera to swing. Others argue the prints could have been carved or pressed in by hand, while defenders point out the depth and stride are far beyond what a hoaxer could fake without heavy equipment. This Oregon Bigfoot footage hasn't faded into the background the way most clips do. What makes it stick is the rawness. The figure isn't just passing through the frame, it seems to be tracking the family. When slowed down, its head clearly turns toward the camera. The arms swing deliberate, the stride unnervingly steady despite the uneven ground. The family's reactions are genuine panic, not scripted fear. Every frame suggests an intelligence behind those movements, something aware and watching. That Oregon encounter gave us brief but undeniable glimpses of something elusive lurking out there. But over in Idaho, the evidence became something you couldn't ignore. Out in Idaho's backcountry in January of 2025, an ATV rider caught something on camera that hasn't been easy for anyone to dismiss. The footage begins with the rider weaving down a narrow trail, engine noise blending with the snap of branches and the echo of winter silence. Then the camera jolts sideways and locks onto a shape moving through the trees. Upright, heavy, covered in dark hair. Its stride isn't frantic, it's steady, balanced, like it knows exactly where it's going. The proportions hit you immediately, arms swinging low, shoulders built like a wall. Whatever this is, it's built for power. Instead of fading into the endless pile of shaky clips, this encounter keeps resurfacing. Not because of hype, but because every frame raises more questions. Watch closely and you'll see the head turn toward the camera, the body adjusting course, as if aware of being observed. The rider's own voice on the recording slips from curiosity to fear in real time. That shift is hard to fake. For the rider, this wasn't just a story to tell later, it felt like an intrusion into something he wasn't supposed to see. The sheer size, the deliberate movement, carried a weight that went beyond chance. Whatever was in those trees wasn't just surviving out there. Was it watching? Idaho gave us a glimpse of that presence in the mountains, but Florida showed that the impossible doesn't always stay tucked away. Sometimes it emerges right where swamplands, tourists, and everyday life collide, forcing witnesses to confront it head-on. Someone filming an ordinary stretch of swampland in southern Florida ended up capturing a figure in motion, upright and deliberate, unlike anything local wildlife accounts could explain. This wasn't some quick glimpse or muddy footprints. This was a living, breathing creature moving through its territory with purpose. Cryptozoologist Dave Shealy recorded this back in the early 2000s during an expedition into a remote section of Everglades marshland. From his small airboat, Shealy's camera followed a dark, upright figure stepping carefully through knee-deep water, weaving between cypress knees and thick mangroves. What caught everyone's attention was its size, roughly 7 feet tall with massive shoulders and long limbs. The anatomical details really got experts talking. Those hands and feet showed dexterity and length that just don't match up with bears. The skull shape hinted at a pronounced sagittal crest. This thing would pause, shift its weight, scan the surroundings like it knew of other presence, then continue silently deeper into the vegetation. But if it wasn't a bear, and it wasn't a person, then what exactly was walking out there in the swamp? Analysts pointed out how the figure's proportions, the way it walked, how it interacted with the swamp environment. None of it matched known species. Some suggested it could be a juvenile or small adult of an unknown hominid. Skeptics warned that swamp perspective and all that vegetation might be playing tricks with size. The footage became the center of heated debate when Shealy shared selected clips. Without seeing the full recording, skeptics wrote it off as misidentification or a hoax. Supporters argued this offered the clearest look at the skunk ape yet, pointing to the combination of movement, scale, and how well it adapted to the environment. In the end, this Florida skunk ape video gave us a rare look at a creature navigating its habitat with clear intention, an encounter that proved how elusive these cryptids are while giving observers a tantalizing glimpse of seeing one up close. But the next encounter would escalate from quiet observation to a public spectacle, as dozens of drivers were about to witness something impossible along a rural highway. Rush hour in Anchorage, Alaska in 2005. Commuters crawling through city streets with those snow-dusted peaks and the massive Chugach Mountains towering in the distance. This went down near the Seward Highway, along a stretch bordered by forested hills and wetlands that flow into Potter Marsh, a protected area packed with moose, coyotes, and tons of migratory birds. From the tree line right next to the road, this massive upright figure just suddenly appeared. Witnesses described something roughly 7 to 8 feet tall, covered head to toe in thick dark hair, with arms way longer than they should be and a stride that just ate up the pavement. In just a few steps, this thing crossed both lanes in seconds. Several drivers said it was as big as a small pickup truck, with shoulders broader than any human could possibly have. This whole encounter happened in clear daylight. No shadows, no poor visibility to mess with what people were seeing. Drivers reported watching the figure pause briefly on the shoulder, like it was scanning traffic with this deliberate, watchful look. One witness said those eyes looked intelligent, aware, like it was sizing up the situation rather than being startled or scared. In less than half a minute, this creature vanished back into the forested marshland, leaving stunned drivers scrambling for their cameras and phones. Most of the video attempts came out shaky or only caught part of it, making skeptics lean towards it being fake. But how did multiple people's accounts become consistent? Authorities tried saying people may have mistook a moose or bear, but experts pointed out that neither of those animals stays fully upright while crossing open roads, and they definitely don't match the reported size or that deliberate way of walking. For a lot of people, this Seward Highway sighting remains one of the most compelling modern accounts of the Alaskan hairy man, a brief, unexplained presence witnessed in broad daylight. Even in broad daylight, these giants slip past humans despite their massive size and confidence. And in Utah, a hike was about to catch the next fleeting visitor. Concrete proof that these creatures often walk right where our eyes just aren't prepared to see them. On October 31, 2012, up in the rugged slopes of Provo Canyon, Utah, a hiker was recording the usual scenery during an afternoon trek. Just a routine outing among the pines, scrub brush, and rocky slopes. The sun was getting low, throwing long shadows across the trail, and you could hear distant water from the canyon creek, adding to that peaceful backdrop. The hiker was focused on capturing those fall colors, but as he panned across a clearing near the trail, something unusual showed up between the trees. This large, upright figure emerged briefly from the shadows. The figure towered over the brush, built thick through the chest with arms that swung low as it moved. For several seconds, it seemed to be watching the trail before quickly retreating into the thick undergrowth. It was over in a flash, and the hiker kept filming, completely unaware of what had just crossed into his frame. It wasn't until later, during careful review, that the size and proportions of this figure became obvious. The way it moved suggested anatomy, unlike any known wildlife in the canyon. When the tape was reviewed, observers noted how the body build and movement failed to line up with any local wildlife. What really stood out was that it was caught in a place people actually use, on an ordinary camera with no setup or staging. That made the clip feel less like performance and more like someone stumbling onto something they were never supposed to see. Could something that large really move through such a well-traveled area without anyone else noticing? For cryptid enthusiasts and locals alike, it proved that these creatures, if they're real, can move through trails and open spaces while staying largely unnoticed, blending into their environment, yet leaving undeniable signs they exist. After that hiker unknowingly captured a fleeting figure, another remote wilderness was about to provide a more deliberate glimpse. This time, a group in California would record a creature moving with seriously uncanny purpose across the Marble Mountain ridges. In June 2001, Jim Mills was leading a youth group through California's Marble Mountain wilderness. The group was backpacking through remote ridges and thick conifer forests when they discovered a series of bizarre structures. Stick formations and cleared areas made from snapped branches suggested something large and powerful had been using this spot repeatedly. These weren't bear dens or anything human-made that Mills had ever seen before. And that afternoon, while hiking along a ridge, Mills spotted it. A figure standing upright in the distance, covered in dark hair, watching them. The creature's movement was unlike anything they'd witnessed. Long strides with arms that seemed way too long for any human. It would pause, shift its weight, and look directly at the group before slowly disappearing behind a stand of trees. The whole encounter lasted several minutes, and Mills managed to capture it on his handheld camcorder. The footage has been analyzed extensively by researchers and cryptozoologists. They said that what makes this footage especially compelling is the terrain. Could a human make those smooth, fluid movements in such dense undergrowth and uneven ground? Critics argue the distance, video quality, and lighting could create optical illusions that exaggerate size and movement. Skeptics suggest Mills' group might have encountered a bear standing on its hind legs or misinterpreted shadows and silhouettes in the forest. Despite the debates, the Marble Mountain footage remains referenced in documentaries, scholarly articles, and cryptid forums worldwide. The Marble Mountain encounter showed a lone giant moving with purpose through California's forests. But years later, across the continent in Pennsylvania, another observer would capture a still unmistakable figure that proved these creatures might inhabit forests far beyond the West Coast. In 2006, while hiking along a rarely used game trail, Rick Jacobs spotted movement at the edge of a clearing about 150 yards away. Expecting to see deer or maybe a bear, he raised his camera and froze. What he captured was absolutely stunning. The photograph shows a massive bipedal figure standing partially hidden behind trees. This thing had to be 7 to 8 feet tall with incredibly broad shoulders, a muscular torso, and long dark hair covering its body. Everything about it matched the classic Sasquatch descriptions witnesses have been reporting for decades. The creature stood upright with a deliberate posture, seemingly aware of Jacobs, but not running away. The clarity of that outline, especially the shoulder width and arm proportions, was unlike anything you'd see from known wildlife or a human silhouette. Cryptozoology experts have gone over this photo with a fine-tooth comb. They point to anatomical features that just don't add up to a person in a costume. The slope of those shoulders, the length of the arms compared to the torso, the shape of the head, none of it matches human proportions. What makes it even more compelling is the setting itself. The forest floor looks completely undisturbed, and there's no human infrastructure anywhere nearby, suggesting this creature's presence was completely natural, rather than some elaborate hoax. Skeptics argue that it might have been a person partially concealed by the thick foliage. But supporters point to the photograph's composition, combined with Jacobs's rock-solid testimony, as evidence this is the real deal. What makes this discovery so significant isn't just the documentation itself, but the questions it raises about Bigfoot distribution and behavior throughout the eastern United States. Does this expand the entire conversation beyond the Pacific Northwest into forests long considered unlikely habitats for these creatures? The Jacobs photo froze a towering shape between the trees, and years later, another lens on a lonely highway would catch a figure just as briefly and just as unsettling. February 4th, 2019, rural Maine. At 3:04 a.m., a roadside traffic camera activated by icy conditions captured something extraordinary on a desolate stretch of highway glazed with frost. For a brief moment at the very edge of the frame, a massive figure stepped into view. Its outline was distorted by the camera's grainy night vision, but the proportions were unmistakable. Shoulders far broader than any human's, with arms swinging low as it moved along the tree line. The figure never crossed fully into the lane. Instead, it lingered at the boundary between pavement and woods, pacing slowly, as if testing the open space. Just before the camera cycled to its next angle, the shape retreated into darkness, leaving only a faint blur of movement behind. When the footage was later reviewed, investigators noted that the figure's brief presence was enough to trigger the system's motion detection. No vehicles were present, no wildlife was recorded, and yet the camera logged an anomaly standing close to 8 feet tall. Frame-by-frame analysis revealed a consistent gait across 4 steps, with the head and shoulders maintaining a level height despite uneven ground. A detail many argue rules out a large quadruped such as a moose or elk. Skeptics counter that the figure's appearance is too brief to draw firm conclusions. Some claim the distorted outline was caused by infrared glare reflecting off ice-coated branches, creating the illusion of a walking shape. Others suggest a person in winter gear wandering near the tree line, though the scale compared to nearby road markers appears to contradict that explanation. Supporters point to one frame in particular. As the figure pivots, light from the roadside sign briefly illuminates what looks like a long arm extending well past the waist. Combined with the pacing stride and upright posture, they argue this is consistent with other documented sightings, and not with any known local wildlife. What do you think could explain this mysterious encounter on that frozen Maine highway? Thanks for watching. If this compilation of Bigfoot found footage piqued your interest, click here for more.